So, all right, here we are on, well, it's Saturday, May 1st, but it's like 11 p.m. So, yeah, we're practically going to head out to like Sunday pretty soon. So, let's get this started. Like, legit, I've, I've like seen the reviews, and now like Apple is like legitimately come out with the pre-orders for the new iPad Pro on most like the sites and the cell providers. So this is like going to be pretty cool. Legitimately, like this is my go-to device. I think it's visible. It was visible earlier. Um, it's like just a general like seventh gen, I believe it is, iPad. It's not the most sophisticated. And it's in like I think it's a Logitech keyboard case, which is pretty phenomenal for what it's worth. So right, okay, the iPad Pro M1 is out, or at least out for pre-order, and now it's being sold through and distributed through the providers, which means as part of your like legit mobile data plan, you can get this on payments and spend the rest of your life doing it. Which, yeah, I know what you're thinking. Like, what more do you need, right? Ah, boom. But seriously, it's a good deal because it's a hell of a lot more processing power. It'll put like the bona fide like power that's sitting before me that's delivering this live stream video to you in like 4K, this M1X Airbook, a MacBook Air type power into an iPad. And the reason why that's important to me and why it's important to like a lot of people is well, for one, so for me, it's Notability. I use the Notability app to take notes and take full like multimedia recordings, pictures, videos of like my live like in-person classes when I was going there. Now it's not so much. But like this thing started failing on several fronts because of the limited amount of storage on regular iPads. Understandably. So it would start complaining, like not enough storage. And then when it couldn't like regularly connect to the iCloud storage for Notability, it would complain that the notes weren't available, which is a pain for me. And I have a feeling like a lot of the connectivity issues had nothing to do per se with like the the actual like connectivity itself, but more of the processing power and its ability to like go ahead and make those connections and keep them. So with the M1 iPad Pro, a lot of this will be fixed. And Bonafide, I know it's gonna be like this great big expense in comparison. But the positive to that is now I get the processing power I need to go ahead and like keep connected to store these notes in iCloud so they're always retrievable to me, not just there or on the new iPad, but on the MacBook in front of me. So I can have it accessible there. And I can be able to go back and forth between home and school and deal with this. Um, so this is like a lot of workload I'm talking to. Now, that's for me personally. But for what's gonna happen with the like poor person, this is gonna do like a lot. This is going to like bring back the idea of the iPad replacing the MacBook in the common user space. Um, the new iPads will be priced rather high, and go up to really high, but they include storage options up to 1 terabyte with most providers, and with some, or at least according to Apple, with its internally, I think they have options to 2 terabyte, which is bona fide, like really awesome storage space. Now, I'm not gonna wanna go that route because of, like, all it takes and all like, I'm going to be looking at but if you're, like, legit living out of this thing and you wanna do that much work, having the 2 terabytes or even before that, the 1 terabyte internal is like a big boost. And then you consider the M1 processor, the extra bump of the XDR graphic and the high quality sound and the Bluetooth 5.0 as well as the Thunderbolt USB 4 that's going to be built in where the charging port is now, you have a lot more options to this that you didn't have before. So you can really use this as a computer. Now, for me, I won't. So I'm probably going to take the lowest option and I'm going to use it first with my iPad Pencil, with my Apple Pencil. But eventually, if I decide to upgrade, I may be considering an Apple Pencil second gen. But for now, it'll be first gen. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to go bonkers like I gotta have the latest right away. I have what I have, and honestly, it gives me the responsiveness I need and the quality I need. So this is really gonna be like a lot of people opposing this as killing the tablet market. The problem I have with that is you have to take out the low income, like, um, segment of that market and say, okay, now these people who can afford to pay the 300 or 500, or in the case of the new iPad Pro, the 700 are out. And no, they won't be out. What they'll do is they'll put the money into Android, which will support Google on the lower end of the spectrum. What this does do is it effectively eliminates like um the Wintel architecture as the um standard by which our futures are determined. We have long been determined by like the idea of Windows and Intel, and that has been a long running thing. Even after Mac, Apple broke in with Mac again, and they took a big chunk of market. It was still a thing, but that's not the case anymore. The market's gone to devices, and we saw this with smart pens. Smart pens are probably one of the best examples because like just a legitimate, I'd say 6 years ago, seven, you still had to hook up your smart pen to your computer to download the information in there and then utilize it. Now it's no longer the case. As of like 4 years or so ago, your smart pen is actively hooked up um to your device, iPad or iPhone or whatever, and your data, including your handwriting, gets actively transmitted to there. As far as the audio and any video you may take, that's already like legitimately something it depends on, which then is a reason why the smart pen market is going to dissolute at this point. It's going to dissolve. If that's the case, there's no need for it. I mean, why have like a market for that if you're going to end up using the devices anyway? Then it's just a matter of buying a bona fide tablet and getting the proper setup, which I'm going to get into now. So as far as that's concerned, the Apple Pencil and the iPad make one of the perfect setups to replace smart pens. And I think it's my favorite is True Notability. I think it's great. I can do a lot of multimedia features, including pictures, videos, all taken and integrated into notes, along with recorded audio actively at the same time. For Android and Amazon Kindle tablet, you have the Incredible app, which, by the way, Incredible is also sold for Apple. So if you have like a cheaper tablet and an older MacBook, and you can't like afford to go all in on Apple ecosystem, you might want to try like one of these um, newer like responsive electronic pens they have on Amazon. they're pretty close to what the Apple Pencil is, and their capacitive, and capacitive ability makes them like very responsive, like you're writing on paper, and they work with anything, and they make using incredible, INKREDIBLE, like it's just like using a notebook. Now I know a lot of you will go, well, can you record the audio on it like you would with Notability on the Apple? And here's the thing, you don't need to. Like, as of more than a while, it's been more than a few years that most Android devices are capable of actual multitasking. So you can be recording audio on an app in the background, such as voice recorder, while writing down your notes. Now, for some older tablets, this may run into problems as the audio from the pen you're using touching the glass may be picked up and translated into recording. But for most modern noise canceling microphones in the recent tablet, this should not be as much as a complication. If I'm wrong and you've found out and you've seen it, let me know, drop a comment. If not, whatever. Um, so like it's that gonna be that good as far as tech goes. So yeah, I mean, I have a Kindle here. I have like after I got the, I wanted to try out the because I got a cheaper Kindle 10-inch. I want to have something for reading iBook, but after I saw the things, I wanted to try out the idea of like, writing with it. So I got one of those things. And I believe it costs like $12, which is definitely a bargain over the Apple Pencil, which is 100 or more. So I got that and used it and can legitimately say that it's not as precise as the Apple Pencil. Like it's not like millimeter precise, but it's good enough for like 99% of the people out there. And that is great to me. And combined with Incredible, which I've tried out with, you wouldn't notice the difference. So if you record the audio with a voice recorder in the background while you're writing your notes with Incredible, you can basically simulate exactly what an iPad does with Notability for far less. You can take and build your like iPad, your no frills iPad saving bundle. Like, you can't afford the iPad, so this is what you use instead. You can build it for like you figure what, even if you don't buy the Kindle, which Kindle's still a name brand, so it still costs money. So let's pretend you don't buy the Kindle, you buy another $50 or $40 tablet. Then you add the $12 pencil, you're already around $50. Let's argue for 60. So then you buy Incredible. I'd say if you buy it in the like Play Store or the other thing like the Amazon Kindle apps, it's gonna end up costing you a couple of dollars. Let's argue for 10. So let's say it's 50. We're going 60 all the way. Let's say it costs $60. You're buying 60 for what most people would pay for like $800 for in the Apple ecosystem. So in my mind, you're doing pretty good already. This is bona fide the budget student like setup. Now I'm not going to say it's for everyone. There may be people who have problems putting this together. There may be people who are not as tech savvy and they try and go at it first and it just fails them and so they can never get off the ground instantly. That's fine. But for most people who at least have an relatively novice intermediate understanding of their tablet and some of the technology, this is like very easy. And then you combine them and you have something you can take notes for like, I mean, come on, let's cut it down 600 to 60. You're talking a $540 price difference. That's $540 less for the technology. Why not? I go for that if I had no choice. I put out the money, and I'm not ashamed to say it. So that is really good. So as far as this whole thing, Apple iPad being the tablet killer, it ain't happening. Um, but this will kill off the Windows device market, but that isn't a surprise. The Windows device market has basically been like this thing on life support that Microsoft has basically pushed up there as a way to get regain their heydays. And Microsoft just doesn't have it that way. It's like their age was the age of the home computer, the PC, where they reached their pinnacle in like the late 90s, mid to late 90s, maybe early millennia. After that, it sort of went downhill for them, and it's remaining to. Um, they're never really gonna like get back that status. They're like the public library now. There's something that was started eons ago with a purpose, and they may have like filled that purpose to some degree, but now it's all over, and they're just an institution that stands there for that reason. So yeah, I really don't see a lot coming in from that. That's like not going to go very far. Um, so okay, let's go with the rest of it. So the Microsoft device market is gone. That's a reality. So what are we looking at in the device market is basically we're looking at the same way it was before. It's not an end game, it's a beginning game, but we're in the middle of the beginning. So the way to look at it is it's going to be Apple is offering the premium where IBM was like at the beginning of the PC revolution, and Android's going to basically be the Microsoft of the device era, and they're going to fuel the multiplicitous development of devices. This will not kill the tablet market. This is not like this is not like Intel versus the other chip manufacturers. This is more like IBM DOS versus Microsoft DOS, and we all know Microsoft DOS like worked out in the end. Um, if that's the case here, remains to be seen. But the point is, in the end, the multi vendor market, the biggest like open market for all developers where competition can thrive and development can thrive will be the most victorious one. Um, so that's a matter of like seeing who that is. It may end up being Apple, but Apple's like I want to put this in the right way. Apple's like environment will change a lot then because they will go back to manufacturing the processor and the OS, but they will stop being like this end all, which they've been for eons. They'll start depending on multiple hardware vendors again to give them the spice they need to go forward and to serve the like multiplicitous market they have. So it's going to be interesting. The alternate side is that in the end, no matter how we see it now and how much we want to say, okay, Apple's ultimately the victor, it may be Android that will end up being um, the runaway success. And the way I see this is what I call the IBM effect, which goes a little like this. When IBM was first beginning, when they were first starting out, IBM was not that great with mainframes. They were horrible. They had crazy supercomputers and a couple of things were light years ahead of them. But what IBM did was they kept banging on doors, kept selling to more businesses, and kept producing more models. As they developed each new generation, they perfected it more. They did more perfection, a new generation is out. More perfection, a new generation out. Yes, but this is like has been emulated successfully a lot of times. We saw this with the PC market, in as far as the way Microsoft helped open up to multi-vendor PCs, which then beat out IBM. Ironically, since I coined IBM as like I put this effect myself on IBM, it's ironic that they should also be the victim of it on the Microsoft. But we've also seen similar, like when Apple came in, iPhone and iPad legitimately had the market by a stranglehold. Um, so Android really had like they had some clout, but they really had no legitimate clout because they weren't really like that great. But lo and behold, they did. They came back. They did more. They came back, and slowly but surely, they became something formidable. And Google and the Google Android, like the Google Android, the multitudes of Google Android devices and the derivatives, or yeah, the derivative distributions that come off Android are basically like Amazon Kindle. They are very much successful in selling their ecosystems. In fact, one of this goes to my point. One of the biggest ecosystems competing with Apple is Amazon, and I think they're doing phenomenal. And they're doing it at a cost which is less than Apple. So, given what I told you about this, if I took like a 10-inch Amazon Kindle and used Incredible on it, it with a capacitive electronic pen from Amazon, no less, I wouldn't get that bad a response in compared to an Apple iPad. It's not the greatest, um, you know, but for like what you're paying for it, you're saving $500. That to me is legitimately a win-win situation. So the thing is, this is where they are now. If they keep coming back and developing and like making better these things as time goes on, then what's going to happen? Apple says, aha, now, but what happens in like years and years? I mean, the M1 I love, but it's based off an ARM architecture. And I've only bought into computers so far. I'm looking into the iPad, but I'm going to wait on that only because I want to make sure I get in on it when I see what the actual effect is because I don't want to put my money and find my money disappearing down a black hole, especially when I'm like, really, this is not money I have to spend. This is money I need to spend, and I do spend because I have to support an education, things like this. So yeah, it's there is a lot that's gonna go into this. And honestly speaking, yeah, so I wanna see what this is gonna be like. Now, that being said, I think the M1 is going to put a large, like, hamper in a lot of people's plans as far as competition. I think it has. I think the fact it's come on the iPad Pro is definitely a competition holder. Um, we're going to see the M1X probably in full. Now people are guessing that an M2X will come probably next fall. I'm thinking that might be right. And the things I'm expecting are sort of like, I don't know what to expect, but here's what I see. I see the M1X probably is going to pump out 12 cores. This will be over the 8 core expectation of the M1. I think it's also gonna get over the limitations of things we've learned to expect with the M1, the limitations, uh, USB ports, the limitation of only having two displays, or if you have a MacBook, one additional display. So I think these things are going to be overcome with the M1X. The M2, I think, will continue. Now, being that the M1X is going to be 16 core, and Apple's going at this hard, and they'll probably, I'm going to come out and say this. I think, I think, and if someone has more information, please put it up. I want to see this. But I think Apple's gonna wait like almost a full year to do the unveiling of the M2, and here's why. I think they're gonna push to go more into 24 to 32 core region, and I think once they have Intel by its like kahuna, they're gonna go after like AMD because AMD's basically the AMD Ryzen with multi-core processors are basically the gaming market right now. And so it makes sense that if Apple wants to complete this domination, which I truly believe they do, they've said it for like decades now. We want to do better. We just don't have the right hardware. We just don't have the right machine, the right facilities. And now they're finally building it themselves again, but now they're building the processor too. So Apple does have the right stuff to complete their vision. So if I was Apple, the first thing I want to do is once I got the processor into the market and people at the medium to low end were already like cheering on it and like really eating it up, my thing would be go after the like medium low to intermediate end, which will be the M1X. Then finally, a year later, just stomp on the with the M2 to hit the high ground. Those are really intense gamers, graphics designers, things like that, and it makes sense. Because that's like really what's gonna transform Apple Silicon for the masses. When Apple can finally go, we got a 24 or 32 core like processor that blows the hell out of anything AMD and Intel put out on the market for Windows, people are gonna be like, ooh, okay. And it's only this much. They're gonna be like cost and power. And when they see it costs them a hell of a lot less for a lot of power on the Mac, they're gonna be drawn to it because that's the one thing that's driven people from Macs for so long. The only dangers I see in this, and that's only long term, is I see the potential for like monopoly, sort of, um, because coming in, this will be all Apple, and that's a monopoly. Um, so But I don't know. I mean, if Apple actually pushes like the tech up or the tech bar, even if they don't make it, I'm cheering for them for this reason. Let's pretend the M1 disappears in like 6, 7 years, right? This never amounts to anything more than like a blip in tech history. It's still pushing up the bar considerably in a way that Intel and AMD has not done in decades. And it's definitely going to squash the Windows domination that's been there for a long time. So the question becomes what next? Well, I don't know. But if the bar is substantially raised over the incumbent, then I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the incumbents making a comeback. What's going to happen is what I've been promising for a while. We're going to see the devices overtake the 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 um the standard computer. And this has been for a while. We shouldn't be surprised. We saw this on the PlayStation with the use of the cell processor, which was based on the old PowerPC architecture. It wasn't the greatest. It had problems, but it did push the bar. And it's these developments that really help change the industry. When we do that, it changes like the the environment around us. It goes through like all these chasms like water and just carves out like new valleys. And that's what we're about to see with this M1 Max, which is why I'm excited and why I think it's gonna play out. Um, do I see the PC going away anytime soon? Probably not. In fact, I probably don't see it going out in my lifetime. I'm gonna be honest about that because I mean, a lot of these kids, they were they were basically raised on like, well, they weren't raised, but they basically like went through computing on Windows 98 and stuff like that. And then a good portion of the millennials were raised on Windows 98, Windows ME. So they're gonna be like, it's their thing, you know? Tell them to like abandon PC and the whole environment and everything it represents. It's not going to go away. It's like religion. You can't get religion to die off like that. And it's not going to. So what's probably going to happen is the Windows PC is going to be around here for a good long time. But as time goes on, it's going to be more of the garage thing with the old man who's still using it, like the old man who's still using the VHS. It just happened. Of course, there'll be people who still use the nostalgia, like hobbyists and stuff like that. And I can't deny them either. I mean, they have their place in this market. But I think on mainstream, we're going to see like over the next few decades, it's just going to totally become like dissolved. Um, the future is basically like you see the new iMac M1, it's like paper thin screen. You can have a wireless keyboard and mouse. That's basically it. Workstations will be able to be put anywhere. Open office environments will be able to be more open. This is the future of desktop computing. Servers themselves will become substantially more thin than they are now. They're already entering that. They're going to only continue to go down that road. And as they do, we're going to see like a lot of that get like shrunk into spaces we don't see. So what's left? The usual end user computing is going to be done mostly on devices, phones, and tablets, mostly tablets. And even the idea of having a keyboard case will make it functionally equivalent to a really small laptop. Or in the case of, yeah, I mean, or in the case if you want a beast like the Samsung Galaxy tablet where it's like a full 20 inches, those will be available. But I think most people are gonna go for like the reasonably sized 12.9-inch iPad Pro or like a 14-inch like Kindle or something. And I think this is gonna be the future. I think phones maybe will start to get more into foldables and phablets. And I mean a lot more. Until now, we've only gone up to like 7 inches. I think though, I think the common end user market, the people who do it just to have the phone, who don't really use it as a career option, are going to be like going back into reductionism. We start to see it. The iPhone mini is a lot smaller than the newer iPhones. It's a return to the old iPhone size. I think we're going to see this a lot. We're going to see a lot more miniature phones for people who don't use them as far as professional career usage. They're going to not want the oversized. They're going to want the minimalistic thing, including the fact that fits more easily in the pocket. So this is like a thing, and it's a good thing. And we're going to see that. Um, through my hearing aids, I can hear metal and playing off my phone, which is kind of cool because then I don't have to like really like, you know, just sit here and being bored. Um, which is cool. Metallica is always awesome. Um, so right, so that's gonna be the thing. It's iPhone. So we're probably looking at the iPad Pro is probably less of a blow to the device market as far as the competition, and more of a blow to the the computing market the way it's been defined so far. I mean, granted, the PC market has like put together some decently designed things, but they have not come anywhere next to M1 and as far as efficiency without having huge fans that draw humongous amounts of electricity, overtaxing like power and everything else. And so they are highly like they're competitive in one way. Their body design is great, but Intel and AMD have lost touch with the reality. And I think the fact I can do this video for like hours straight. I haven't been doing for hours, but I can do it and do it and do it and have like really good processing of it as I go along and not have a fan at all. It's all passive air cooling. And this thing is still cool to the touch. Is a testament to what Apple did as far as silicone development. And Intel and AMD, for as much as they can brag, they're not getting anywhere next to this. And if Apple can emulate this all the way up to a 24 or 32 core processor that can compete with the AMD Ryzen, even at an issue of 80%, let's say, that's great. I mean, you're like, oh, but it's 80% slow. Yes, but it doesn't take up the same amount of electricity, and that means far less heat and far less excessive cooling systems, which take up even more electricity and drive even more heat. This is system wear. This is system interruptions. This is like, that's what all that translates to. So if Apple's able to do like get 80, 90, 70, 80, 90% there, while also cutting down on all the bottlenecks, including the heating itself and the cooling requirements and the massive electricity requirement, then I think Apple is going to totally redefine this discussion, which is important to where we are now. Because until now, everything's been driven by Intel's older CISC model. Once they were able to buy up like once the once the market professional risk providers like Digital Equipment Corporation with the Tech Alpha or Motorola's PowerPC was taken off the general market, that whole discussion was changed and Intel was able to dictate it with CISC architectures, especially after it was able to like derive a lot of intellectual development from licensing AMD's labs after they bought up Digital Equipment Corporation and their Tech Alpha manufacturing plants. This is important history. There's a reason why Digital Equipment Corporation was the first over 1 gigahertz. And agreed, nowadays that's like not that big a deal. But when it happened, it's like all these people are struggling at like just barely making 700, 800 megahertz, and their like processors were like well overheating. Well, this is the same thing. It doesn't seem that bad, but the future of computing is not just like putting a bigger engine in, it's building a better engine that accomplishes the same or nearly the same without all the inefficiencies, and that's what Apple has done, and that's the significance of this. So, like, I can go on a rant here and go on for hours, and you can listen to me and see me and like, you're getting a headache already. And I'm not even up 1 degree. There's no fan going here. I got windows open galore. I got like legal tech memo. I got a paper for like social research. I got psychological research data. I got all this stuff. And I have a whole bunch of things going in the background while I'm doing this video. And this thing has not even gone up a degree. There is no fan kicking it. And I'm not like it it's incredible. So what you get from that is that you get this phenomenal development. Like that's like it can do so much more without like driving up the cost via inefficiencies and compensations for those inefficiencies. Because the one thing like any good engineer will tell you, it's not just like the ability to build up to something, it's like the ability to reduce resistance. You have to like work with the economics of energy. You build up your like combustion, but you also like reduce your resistance to guarantee once you got it set in motion that it has the least resistance and continues on that course without like putting up continual force and 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 like creating these problems of like, for example, when you have a lot of resistance, you have a lot of like tremoring, or you have a lot of like from the work itself, it creates a lot of friction and excess like wear, and it creates secondary motion due to the friction against you moving forward. And it's the same with processing power. It basically all translates to the same thing in physics. So when you talk about processing power and why these people are so surprised about how well the M1 performed, is they're not actually equating the whole thing in. Intel's a lot of power. There's a lot of like it hits that rocket hard, and it's true, it punches through, but it gets a lot of resistance on the way up, and that creates a lot of problems, which is why you have bottlenecks, you have freezers in like video, you have these areas where you cut out a lot and do all this stuff. I mean, I have a Core i7 here, and it doesn't perform even half as well as this. And it's legitimately I upgrade the drive to an MPNE like 1 terabyte with cutting edge speeds, and sorry, it just doesn't cut it. So yeah, it's sort of like that. So where does this leave us ultimately is, well, what it leaves us with is this. Like Apple has figured out how to put the system together without like um well cutting down on the resistance. It's figured out a way of like making the whole like um processing thing aerodynamic. It's not just making it faster. So now, yes, it travels through, but it needs less fuel to travel through, because when it hits its way up, the velocity can keep a constant because it doesn't have the same resistance as, like, let's say the Intel processors have now. And this is seen if you look at a lot of the comparisons, and there are a lot of good comparisons out there, you will see the M1 flaws on average, both AMD and Intel Windows computers. And this is why. When they hit a certain point, like they hit like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes in processing at peak performance, they shoot up that fan and they shoot up at max, and you can really hear it. And it like they freeze up at points during processing because of this reason. All this stuff leads to like inefficiencies that actually break the ability to process a solid set of instructions. Um, you have to picture all those vibrations as being like static on a radio where it goes, and then that breaks up what you're receiving. So at some point, they may say something you just don't hear, and that's important. So the M1 is really getting around this, and it's that like power plus efficiency that makes it substantially better. And that's why I see like they're gonna go aim to double now for this year in the fall, and that's gonna be their like IMAX in that. And I'm considering maybe looking at that, but I think they're gonna have serious like things coming out in the fall of 2022. Because I think this is my opinion, they're going to like hit hard with the M2, which will be along the lines of 24 or 32 cores. Um, and if I'm wrong, if they come out with like something else, or they come out with a family of M1X machines, then fine. But I really see them like taking this in stride. It's like the M1X is a minor upgrade compared to what the M2 might be. So if they come out with 24 or 32 cores and they're able to keep the same efficiency where I can push them to peak performance with little or no resistance, like I can with this M1, then that will deliver phenomenal performance in gaming, in um rendering applications, like for architecture and motion and graphics, and it'll like result in better qualities, less cost, more efficiency, less time wasted, and that's all gonna be like good for business. It's gonna be good for the gamers are gonna go wild over it because gamers don't like to wait for their game to load 5 minutes. If you give them a processor which gives them less like resistance and actually delivers performance, most of these people will insist that the game companies produce for that. That's the only reason why I've been at this so long. Sorry. Oh, there. So yeah, that's the only reason Windows has been at this for so long. It's been like a matter of like price performance. So like when you like take something and actually make it like a performance more cost effective, then people are gonna buy into that because it costs them less and it's easier to get their hands on and easier to set up. And this has been the thing with Microsoft Windows for the longest time. But if Apple is actually going to take this crown with the M1, M1X, and eventually an M2X, then guess what? People are going to like be banging on gaming company doors saying, boom, boom, boom. We want to port to the new Macs because they actually give us what we need in a cost effective model. And it also goes a lot to Apple's like desire to enter the gaming market because this has been for a long time. And they really want to like integrate it with Apple TV. And I can see this happening on so many levels because Apple already has like a large um gambit of like video and even some light gaming on their Apple TV, especially with those Apple controllers they have, the Air one. So I can legitimately see Apple taking this to the next level, and then what? It's not like that hard to make the conclusion. So Apple's gonna want to push this like into like overdrive by next year, and I seriously see them hitting like I seriously see them hitting the Wintel market with their best shot and totally trying to like undercut like what Microsoft, Intel, and AMD have done in the market for so long. And it's well deserved because neither of them have like neither of them, meaning not all three, have been knocked off their like thrones in a while. They I mean it's been not that long. I mean it's been a good time since Cyrix was in the market, since Windchip, and a lot of other companies who manufacture an Intel compatible processors aside from AMD disappeared. So yeah, it's like it's been a while since any of these guys had real competition. And don't forget, it was like before Microsoft became what it was in the modern arena, there were like Unixes and other operating systems out there that thoroughly killed it on the corporate level. So yeah, it's like Microsoft has been like relaxing since Unix disappeared out of the mid-range market for the most part, and Linux is making a big comeback in there, ironically, even more so than Unix ever owned. So it's gonna be an interesting like play. I will say this though, I wouldn't be surprised if Apple at some point, like if they're doing all this, they wouldn't take their like stab at an application server. I know they tried to under the old Apple flag, but the old Apple flag was more of like a niche market than the new like Apple. The new Apple when it like transitioned away from PowerPC and Mac OS X and into a new like when it transitioned away from PowerPC and the old classic Mac OS and Mac OS X, it sort of made a whole new age and a whole new name for itself. And that totally redefined what it was. So in competitions now, it would be closer to like Linux application servers, which are quite different than what you would imagine. You could use a Linux application server as a Windows user and not even know you're using it because it would be able to run Windows applications all the same, and that's the fact. So yeah, it's not a like using virtual machines on a Linux server is completely different than like old school application server stuff. This isn't like ancient Novell NetWare here. So right. And I know most of you are too young to understand what that reference is for. But look it up, Novell NetWare. Um, you're bound to be like thrown out of your seat shocked, I guarantee you. So, all right. Um, yeah, I could see Apple doing that. So, Bonafide, I think this is a good like video. I haven't done one on the literature like this in a while. Um, but yeah, so aside from that, what else do I see coming up? I don't know, but Apple is definitely on like the cutting edge of this stuff. Um, the one thing I have to say is I think after they get past a certain hurdle, they may want to refocus their like um vision on the iPhone and lower because I can really see those devices like iPhone and iWatch being focused into its own little niche market. So you'll have the micro devices of that like little niche, and then you'll have things like Apple TV eventually, the iPad family and the Mac running off the M1 hardware architectures, and I can really see this being of great benefit. Um, so right, exactly. I'm also interested to see what this may drive Intel and like AMD to do because, like I said, they really haven't been driven to like really design in quite some time, and so this is definitely going to be a motivator. Um, Especially, I would love to see Intel try and match this up because Intel's often pulled out of like last place only because it was afraid of losing a big portion of the market. And I think this is one of these cases where it potentially can. Um, so it'll be interesting to see them pull out and create sort of like a, a processor that can like really outperformed the Apple M1s or the Apple MX processor family, um, and do it without a fan and just passive heating. I think that would be phenomenal, and I think Intel has it in their like garage or in their dungeon somewhere. I think they just need to dig in and like really work at developing it. I can see Intel doing something like this, but I'm really hoping it's an inspiration because I would really love to see them pull up something that could like compete with the M1X and then we'd like have like a really good dogfight to the end. Other than that, I want to see the device market light up now. I want to see how Android and its like relatives like Amazon's Kindle keep on like fighting tooth and nail with Apple because I don't think as many people have put it, Apple has put the like nail in the coffin of the Android market. I think quite the opposite. I think they put the inspiration in the Android market, and now Samsung and that are going to come from behind and actually like start to start to like rage in the way where they haven't for a while, and they're going to pull up, and they're going. This is where the real battle will begin. So I don't know how it's going to start or how it's going to end up, but I'm really interested to seeing how it plays out. All right, then. I guess this is like a really long video on a Saturday night. So to stop myself like 2 minutes before 12, I'm going to end it.